Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to a special episode. And in this episode, I have invited on the ambassador, and we will be talking about what we lovingly refer to as the state of fandom. I think we have different views. I think we're both quite positive, which is a good thing. I sometimes mire myself in the negative, but we're going to have a chat about that and see what kind of grounds that we can cover and maybe come up with some new ideas and new perspectives, which will be always good and exciting. So I'm just going to start from my thing where I'm going to explain how I've seen fandoms throughout the years. And it started off when I was a kid. It was Nintendo versus Sega. Do you remember Nintendo versus Sega? And I was a wee boy. It was Nintendo versus Sega, and everyone was like, "Oh, this, that, and the other." And then we moved up from that, and then it got into Babylon 5 versus DS9 with my friends. Which one was better? And it's obvious it was Babylon 5. So and then we moved up to and then we moved into like the Sony PlayStation era, whether that was better than Nintendo, and then Sony versus Xbox, and then there were other TV series and things like Star Wars versus Star Trek, and what was it, Lord of the Rings versus Harry Potter. Problem is now there's a weird thing in the fandom where it's not one thing versus another. It's this versus itself. So it's like kind of, if you like this, then there's something wrong with you. And it's like, I don't personally think that. I think I like it or I don't like it. And if you like it, well, that's your business, isn't it? At the end of the day. And it just seems very weird that there's this weird kind of inversion on things where we're kind of turning in on ourselves rather than saying, hey, you know what? You do you. I remember the good old days when it was you do you, and it's like, oh, okay. But it was not like we were doing one versus another. It wasn't like football teams where you said my football team's better than your football team, or basketball team, or cricket team, or whatever. So starting off with that, what's your experience with fandom?
Well, honestly, for me, the term fandom didn't really become known to me or wasn't in widespread use until just a few years ago. I mean, growing up as a kid in the 80s, in the 90s, we were just fans of these things that we loved. We would debate which was better, much like you and your friends would, Star Wars versus Star Trek, which was always the big one. I mean, that has been the age old debate amongst geek culture, pop culture enthusiasts across the board. Could the Empire defeat the Federation? Could the Rebels defeat the Federation? Which universe would destroy the other? Would the Empire completely come in and wreck the Borg and all these other things? And of course, there's also the other age old debate: Marvel versus DC.
Yes.
That has been an age old debate that has been going on. It will probably go on until our sun goes dark and goes supernova. And looking at this as an OG, as you are, Gareth, original gangster, original geek, perhaps be better.
Yes.
As an original geek, our perspective on pop culture is very much different from what those that have come up, the generations that have come up after us. In the simple fact that we are I think in a lot of ways, a lot more moderate. We try to be a little more open-minded about other people's perspectives and opinions on this thing called pop culture. And one of the things that I have, my positions, my stances, some have stayed pretty steady throughout my lifetime. Others have evolved and have changed. And one of the things that I have come to realize, because I am a student of history, my wife is a student, is a student of history as well. The thing we call pop culture is simply a reflection of the culture in which we live. And for as long as humanity has had its cultures, dating all the way back to the great ancient civilizations of the past, it has been a reflection of the world we live in now. And I think if we look at the movies and the TV shows and the music of the 80s, the 90s, and even going back before that, it has always been a reflection of the culture in which the various generations have lived in. Some things have grown and flourished and carried on, like the Star Wars fandom, like the Star Trek fandom, like the Doctor Who fandom, which we are both a part of. And we either like the progression, we like the evolution of what has happened, or we have not. And the term fandom is just that. It's a term to identify a particular universe that we as people identify with. And it's, for me, it's sometimes a little bit, it is somewhat troubling to see the division that has sprung up. And I think in some instances it is a division that is non-organic. I think it is division. There is divisions that have been created by others who are opportunists to get their own message out there and not be authentic, not be genuine. And they're doing it essentially to make a quick buck. And that's kind of my perspective on it.
Okay, I think there's some other things in there. I think that the internet has played the biggest part of it turning inversing on itself. Yeah, because before we used to have the Star Trek, Star Wars, and I like I probably like Star Trek more than I like Star Wars. But I think that, if you know, I think there's some aspects of science fiction. So this is getting nerdy. Sorry, I have to excuse me as I go into the geeky weeds. Okay. How can I put it? Your technology and everything is based on your star drive. The better the star drive is, and the faster you can travel, the more power you can output, and the more damage you can do. So you can have shields all you want, but anyway, going back, you put part of me saying that is because I'm a little flabbergasted by what you said in a good way. Is a lot more deeper than I was expecting. As I said, good kind of exchange of ideas and stuff. For me, I think what's happened was there's this. I think it's the algorithm that causes this. Yeah, I think it's the algorithm and this clickbait for hate, I think, is a way of describing it. Yeah, yes. You sit there and you're flicking through your feed. Yeah, and it's all like kind of the kitten videos, and it's like kind of Star Wars sucks. Why does Star Wars suck? Yeah, and you click on it, and then you start watching why Star Wars sucks, and that kind of fuels the kind of interaction and stuff that people get. And I think that then, imagine you're a YouTuber, yeah, and you've probably just been doing, run of the mill kind of white toast kind of reviews with stuff, and then all of a sudden, bosh, one video blows up, and it's the video saying that you hated an episode of X. Yeah, and then you're like, okay, cool. So then you carry on doing your thing, and the algorithm has then kind of shelved you. Yeah, you have your little peak, and then you're running down, and you go, okay, well, maybe if I try and do another video of the same vein, and then guess what? It works again, and then again, and again, and before you know it, you get caught in a cycle, and you're trapped in just slagging something off. So one of the YouTubers you talked about is Doomcock, and I don't like Doomcock for two reasons. Yeah, he has a puppet and he talks to the puppet, and that stuff drives me wild as an adult. All right, that really gets my goat. I started watching him when The Expanse got cancelled. Yeah, because when they was doing the Save the Expanse thing, I was like, okay, I want to know what's going on with The Expanse. And then after that happened, again, this is like kind of the algorithm thing, because I wasn't interested in him beating up on Kathleen Kennedy or this, that, and the other. And I've got my gripes with Star Wars, and we might go into that later. But I'd fallen away because my interest had tailed off, and I'd gone somewhere else. But he had moved on to doing Star Wars' crap and his leaks of what's happened behind the scenes, and there was a punch up apparently, or some nonsense going on. And then that draws people in, and then they go in there and they look at it, and it's like, dude's talking to a puppet, for crying out loud. and that kind of really grated on me as a creator. But just using him as a little example, he's one of the people I think fell into that trap of the hate clicks kind of thing, where the algorithm kind of pushes that kind of anti-fandom, shall we say, and then things then go outwards from there. But I think part of it's the human condition, because we click on it and we're guilty for doing that, and then making it then to be more relevant and stuff. It's like we do this podcast and stuff, and it's really an excuse for all three of us to get together once a week. Yeah, so it's like, you know, it's not great. So it's not, sorry, it's good, but it's not great that, you know, these kind of things, these hate click things happen.
Yes.
Sorry, as I said, wandered off into the weeds a bit.
No, you honestly, you Gareth, you bring up a very good point, because it is very easy. Well, I will use a quote from a favorite movie of mine. I imagine it's a movie you know well because you're a Star Trek fan. A doctor is a truth of human nature is far easier to destroy than create.
Yeah.
Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, Spock to McCoy. And the issue is the internet has very much played a part in how we as fans and these different fandoms are able to come together in a way that we have not been able to do really in the past. I mean, we were all on our own little isolated little islands growing up as kids. We had our friends and our buddies and everything that we would talk to and we would hang around with and discuss this stuff, go both in school and after school in the neighborhood, and everybody getting together at one person's house or another, and whatever the case may be. But now we are able to quite literally reach around the world and talk to people who we would never have had the opportunity to do so because of the internet. And the internet has played a very big part in getting our ideas out there and connecting with others who are fans of these fandoms that we are a part of and that we love. And for better or worse, and yes, full transparency, I too at one time was a subscriber of Doomcock. But the thing for me was I started to see through, as I will call it, the con. And all his content and everything that he said was essentially just a con. Nothing of it was real. Nothing was authentic. Nothing was genuine. It was just bashing on others just to get a click and get a view and get his make his buck. And you know, the thing for me is here, I don't have an issue if people want to do YouTube and if they are able to get monetized and make some money off of this. That is all well and good, but at least have some ethics, have some morals to how you conduct yourself and the type of content that you put out there into the internet and into the world. Because you have to realize you are going to have, and you, to one degree or another, you're going to have a impact upon others. You may find others that think the same way you do. I mean, I will be fully transparent. I did not care for the sequel trilogy, but I moved on from it. You know, I went and saw Rise of Skywalker. I saw The Last Jedi. I saw it twice. I said my piece on it and I moved on. Now, have I talked about other Star Wars properties since the sequel trilogy? Yes, I have, because it is of interest to me. And I will always be a fan of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy, it's there. You like it. Cool. I don't. That's me. What I have tried to do with my persona, quote unquote, on the internet is try to be more of a moderate. I've tried. Now, I do have my passions, I do have my opinions, and I will voice them. But what I don't do is I don't smash down or slap down somebody else who has a contrarian opinion from my own. Now, if someone's coming in there and just comes to my channel and just as being a toxic, negative troll, I'm not going to give you the time of day. You want to go troll, go do it elsewhere. But if you want to have a reasonable conversation instead of just spouting a bunch of rhetoric that I've heard a dozen times over, I'm going to be respectful, but I'm going to just tune you out. And I'm not trying to be rude here or anything, but I've gotten to the point where I'm tired of people just spouting the same rhetoric that they get from certain channels and certain groups on the internet and on social media. I have no time for it. It's just not my thing. I'm not here to hate things. Go ahead.
It's a waste of energy. I'll be honest with you. I reserve hate for people I actually know. I have to have some care, because the opposite of love isn't hate; it's indifference. Yeah, that's always the weird thing, because you don't care about it. Blah blah. But let's talk about I'll talk about Star Wars for a moment, because I watched the sequel trilogies, and the first one I watched, I wasn't very impressed. It felt like, when a band does a greatest hits album. Yeah, I felt like they got Star Wars greatest hits and put it into one film, and I thought, I thought, right, maybe they're playing it safe. They're doing it because they're playing it safe, and they just want to get the audience back. And I was like, okay, I accept that. And then The Last Jedi came out, and I watched that, and I was like, did they just end the trilogy? Because it felt like an end. They felt like you finished the films off.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, and it was. I found it. I watched it, and I like going out with my son and my father-in-law to go and watch films, and it's nice having this weird 3 generational things, because you get different, a real broad look at it. When you ask them how they saw the film. So we went and saw the film, and they were okay with the film. It was big and flashy and whatnot, and they're not super geeks, so they don't know the lore and the technology and all the other stuff that goes into it. Yeah, and I don't think it was, from my perspective, there were egregious science fiction errors, like the arcing lasers in space. That little stuff, like, you ask anyone who knows me, those little things drive me wild. It's like, no, it goes straight. It goes straight.
Yeah,
there's no gravity in space.
So exactly.
Those things, yeah. So we went and watched it, and we were fine. And then I was just like, I watched it, and I was like, again, I didn't hate it. I was indifferent towards it. I didn't really care, because I watched the first one, and I was expecting them to ramp it up. I was expecting like a reverse Empire Strikes Back, and it was going to end with the AT-ATs assaulting the base and them escaping. In my head, that was what my head had written before I went in there. So we saw that, and then when the Rise of Skywalker came out, we were staying in a place in Wales, and they had a cinema that was just 110 years old. Yeah, so we were, we'll go to the 110-year-old cinema and watch Star Wars. And I went, come on, guys, let's go and watch Star Wars. My father-in-law and my son weren't interested. The other one they watched, they looked at it and went, this is boring. And my wife tried watching it on Disney Plus after. And my problem was, this is really poor content, but really well made. Yeah, it was. Yeah. That's the problem with it. You look at The Last Jedi, from a production standpoint, it's gorgeous. It looks great, but it has no substance. That's the bit that gets me. And there's plot holes in it, and then they sidelined Finn, which really grated on me, because I kind of like Finn was the only character I liked in the Force Awakens. I watched that, and it was, I think he won me over when he turns and goes, "No, I was on janitorial duties there, or whatever it was. I was a janitor at that part." I was like, "Oh, cool. We've gotten an everyman. Okay, he's an everyman that worked for the Empire, but that makes him interesting. Yeah, he's not a soulless psychopathic killer like most of the stormtroopers have been, put into that kind of situation." And that grated on me, because he was like, kind of the people go on about Rose Tico and stuff, and it wasn't Rose Tico, it was the sidelining of Finn that was my issue, and the fact that they cut the fight out between him and Phasma on whatever the superior Star Destroyer thing.
The supremacy.
The supremacy. Thank you very much. But then my kind of logical business head kicks in. And you saw what happened. People didn't like that. The box office dropped off quite sharply after it released, because everyone was like, not very good. And then Solo, Solo didn't work as well as they were expecting. They were expecting something a bit more for Solo. I didn't like Solo. It felt like a TV movie more than a Star Wars
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It had Star Wars elements in it, but it wasn't. It's something I can't. There was a magic sauce, or whatever it was missing from that. I think it was the fact that they had to reshoot it quickly and put it together. Probably worked against them when doing that. But yeah, it lost money and it put people off. And that's when you start looking at the lead. This is when the Kathleen Kennedy bashing kind of gets in, because it's like kind of bad leadership. Someone somewhere has cocked up, and someone needs to take responsibility. Don't need to be fired. Just need to take a little bit of responsibility and kind of get right the ship. But that didn't seem to happen. They went to JJ and they went, fix it, and he just wrote a laundry list of things that people wanted to see, popped it into a film, tried to write a script around it, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Can I just go through do you mind if I go through the chat? It's all right. It's
absolutely.
But
yeah, absolutely.
It's people. These lovely people have been chatting away, and I haven't thingy. So Star Wars theology. Hello.
Hey, Star Wars. Good to see you. A lot of these are people that I know. I know Mountains of Elysium, Josh Bowen. They're all friends of mine. And
good.
Star Wars Theology is a channel I just recently came across and everything. So everybody in the chat, if you're not subscribed to each other, go subscribe to each other. Because the Mountains of Elysium, I've known him for a very long time. He's good people. Josh Bowen. Josh, I don't know if you have a channel, but hey, Josh, if you're not subscribed to this guy or Theology or Mountains of Elysium, go check him out. And Be Stupid Gamer, good to see you.
He's one of he's one of ours. He had some funny words to say about my co-host Nigel on a video game stream I watched at 2:00 in the morning on a Friday. I need to clip that and show Nigel, because it'd be like yes. Sorry guys, I'm chatting away here, so please don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm just trying to get my head around some of these things. Anyway, we had the Last Jedi, and then this is where the algorithm then kicks in, and you get all these channels explode off the back end of that. Now, there were channels that I was watching beforehand that then brought this up, and then other channels that wasn't. So I think it was I was following a guy called Hill versus Babyface.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
I was following him beforehand, and then he went on it, and it was okay, because he touches his special, shall we say. In the way he kind of puts himself across, it's a little kind of crazy, and that's the rant itself is entertaining, but again, it comes back to clicking on something that's not so positive, and then feeds the algorithm, which then pushes more not so positive things. And it's strange, because you got all these people, they all popped up, and they all were like kind of going on about the Last Jedi and bits, and I think Ryan Johnson on Twitter didn't help himself. There's have you heard of a game called No Man's Sky?
Yes, I have. Never played it, but I have heard of it. I know about the controversy behind it. Yeah,
and it was an absolute shit show, and everyone kept their mouth shut. And they came back a couple of months later. They'd fixed massive chunks of the game, because they were just getting their heads down and getting on with it. And sometimes it pays to be a little bit more professional, especially if you're a director getting paid millions of dollars by a big studio. And I don't know why he started interacting in the way he did, rather than just showing bits of film. But here's some food I ate. I met this famous person. Blah blah blah. He then started kind of poking the fans, and then that again, we get this big kind of engine thing that gets fueled up and starts, kind of spooling up and fueling more hate and more kind of anger and stuff. Now, can I say that? Did I talk about it? Yeah, I talked about it. Did we stop talking about it? Yeah, we did stop talking about it. We stopped talking about it because we found it boring. Yeah, there's a point where it kind of peters out. We petered out quicker than anyone else, I think, because we did 2, maybe 3 weeks of stuff, because there was some news, and then we just went, let's get on with something else. It's more interesting. The Expanse is coming back soon, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I've only been on YouTube for 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month, literally in November. And for about a year and a half, my wife was like, "Honey, I love talking about this stuff with you, but why don't you start yourself a YouTube channel? See if there's other people out there that want to talk about this stuff as well." I was like, "Okay." So I started my channel, and it has evolved, it has changed and everything, and as I've gotten better with doing it and how I want to present myself. And the one thing for me, and it is a hashtag that I do have on my Twitter profile, and I do have it, something I believe in. It's simply 3 words: no more division. Because I have seen a lot of division in these fandoms that that I have been a part of. Like I said before, the term fandom was even a well known term, and I try to bring together people who might have differing ideas on these different fandoms, these different realms of pop culture that we all love, that we all enjoy. If it's Star Wars, if it's Star Trek, if it's obviously Babylon 5, one of my all time favorites. I will say this: of all the fandoms I'm a part of, Babylon 5 has been one of the most positive and most respectful groups that I am a part of. And I'm happy to say that, because we love this show. We love the universe that JMS created, and we just simply share our love and our appreciation for it. The thing that has bothered me, I saw The Last Jedi twice. The first time I walked out of the theater, my mind was completely blown. And I've told this story before, so I'll give the abbreviated version. After seeing it the second time, I realized how flawed and how broken the movie was, and how the story made no sense, at least to me. And I've had discussions and debates with other people who absolutely love The Last Jedi, and with people who love the sequel trilogy in general. And I say to them, I look at you, I was like, I don't look at a person who is different from me, who is other from me. You are a fan of this universe, same as me. You just happen to come at it from a different point of view, and you happen to like something different than I do. But that doesn't make your opinion invalid. And the big thing for me is, I would like to see discourse within these fandoms become a little more, well, civilized. I want to hear something other than just the same mindless rhetoric of how Kathleen Kennedy is an awful person, how she is just trying to suck all of the maleness and the whiteness out of Star Wars. Guess what? Kathleen Kennedy is a human being, the same as the rest of us. Yes, she has fame, she has notoriety, she has position, she has power, she has all those things. But at the end of the day, she is just a human being. And full transparency, I didn't care for everything that she has done with the Star Wars universe, with the franchise. But at the same time, I have to realize that she was kind of thrust into this position. Yes, she's been a producer in Hollywood and the entertainment industry for a long, long time. But she was thrust into the position as president of Lucasfilm. Yes, George Lucas handpicked her. He wanted her to take it over because, well, he got a little tired of all the the bashing from the fans, and I was guilty of that for a while. Again, full transparency, because I got a lot of bad critique and a lot of bad reviews about the prequel trilogy, and it kind of soured me on it. But I tuned all of that out. I went back, I rewatched the prequel trilogy. I was like, I love these films. Are they perfect? No. No film. There has not been a single film in the history of cinema that has been 100% perfect. Even The Godfather is not perfect, but there are people who absolutely love that series of films. And I think we as fans have a bigger impact upon fandom, particularly those of us that exist in the social media and the online sphere, than we realize, because we do, to one degree or another, have an impact and have an influence upon these fandoms that we are a part of. And I'm not saying you can't voice your opinion. You are absolutely entitled to voice your opinion. You have freedom of speech and freedom of thought. So by all means, voice it, but at least be authentic, be yourself. And if you do that, you're going to have the opportunity to have a lot of good conversations rather than just existing within an echo chamber. And that, unfortunately, is another issue that I have seen. I'm sure you, Gareth, have seen as well. Is there are a lot of echo chambers out there that just have a bunch of people who just agree with one another. I don't want to necessarily exist in an echo chamber, and I don't want to just be a yes man and just be a blind fanboy. But I think there is also a way to give critique and give review, but give it honestly. And that, for me, is one of the driving forces behind the whole idea of my channel and what I put out in terms of my content.
And I'll be honest with you, that's the mature, correct. I'm going to say correct. I'm going to actually put down the correct way of saying it, because people, you can't expect everyone to have your views, and you can't just sit there and nod. It's like talking about our podcast and stuff that we do. Yeah, we barely agree on anything. Yeah, we can't even agree what time to start. Yeah. Right, that's one of the things I kind of like. We're more like brothers than we are friends, because we argue so much in between things. We try to tone down the arguing for thingy, but we all take the mick out of each other every opportunity we get, and that's more kind of a brotherly thing, shall we say?
Yes.
But you're right. The thing with the echo chamber and having just everyone agree with you and this, that, and the other, and it's like. It's not good. You do need to diversify your opinions and the pool in which you get your opinions from. There are I see part of me. I'm thinking about the kind of videos that I click on, which are not necessarily constructive. I think it's probably the best way of putting them. Those videos, I do get a kind of catharsis out of them. That's probably. I'm trying to think why we engage so much with it. There is a catharsis. There is the what is that when you call it? It's when you confirmation bias. You want some confirmation bias that your opinion is right. Catherine Kennedy is a terrible executive producer. Here's a video, courtesy of YouTube, telling you that she is a terrible producer. You watch it, you hear what you like. Yeah, more clicks. Yeah, part of me is like kind of, yeah, that's the way we are. It's kind of horrible aspect of humanity, shall we say?
Yeah.
But I think maybe some of these people who do these things, watch these things, I won't say do these things, need to probably in that trying to mature phase, if that makes any sense. Yeah, yes. because I remember I had a friend called Colin. We used to argue crazy about Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5, and it was great. We kept on, we were to in and throw in, and what was it? The Way of the Warrior was his big thing. It was like when The Way of the Warrior came out. Remember that? That was the start of the third season. Was it start of the third season or start of the fourth season? When they decided to kick it up into high gear, they got the Defiant. The Klingons were trying to attack Deep Space Nine, and those lies that they had in the first episode when they said, "Oh, we've got X amount of phone torpedoes," and things were now true. And then had the big kind of, and it was a really good episode. I'm not going to.
Oh yeah, I know exactly. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I had that was good, but is it the one where Earth Force attacks B5? And we used to go back and forth like that, and it was great. As I said, this is the weird thing I find, is that we're not comparing anymore. It's just Star Wars is bad, and that causes like a logic circuit in my head just to go, something's not right here. But how is this happening? Because something is causing us to turn inwards like this. I think that part of it is it might be bad marketing and social media to add on top of the YouTube algorithm. So, as I said, going back to Star Wars, talking about Rian Johnson's behavior on Star Wars, yeah. And then what was it? There was a game called The Last of Us Part 2, and it leaked online. Yeah, and the creative director on that, he was then attacking people on Twitter. And I'm not sound rude or anything. If you're in charge of a massive company and you're doing big things, why have you got time for Twitter? seriously, put the fuck. You're more important than that. And it's
Exactly.
like I think of the, because I'm a corporate guy, unfortunately, and I think about my leaders in the corporate world, and they're like, they never waste their time on Twitter. They never talk to people. They have people in marketing departments to do that, who do it officially with rules. But I think maybe we've got to, maybe it's a two-pronged thing. We have YouTube, where it promotes things that are hateful, and then you have the hateful things on social media, be it from the creators or from the creators of the thing, or YouTubers that have then pushed things out. I hate social media. I like Instagram because it's simple, and then that's about it. We've got a Twitter account. I don't really engage too much on the Twitter account, but I think that I'm trying to. Part of me is like trying to doing a dumb thing and trying to find a solution. So I'm sitting there breaking these bits off, going, "All right, it could be this, it could be that." But it is strange when you come back and you look at these things and how it kind of, they just. Are we screwing ourselves over with algorithms for search engines and stuff to put things forward? Because it's like we're not hearing the Star Wars and the Star Trek fans go at each other. Have you ever engaged with the Warhammer 40k fandom?
I cannot say I have. I know for Warhammer 40k. I think it's a really cool concept. I've actually watched a few fan films based in that universe, and I like it. I'm just not a huge fan of it and everything. I'm not a big role playing game type person or tabletop role playing game type person. But some of the stuff and everything is actually really cool looking. I like some of the ideas. So I do want to address Let's Go Brandon's comment, and of course Josh Bowen.
Brandon,
yeah,
can you access
there is a systemic and intentional group of people that are destroying our fandoms to promote an agenda. Wake up. Yeah, Brandon, I 100% agree with you, and Josh kind of names them. Well, he doesn't he does name them. And the fandom menace, or as I call them, the fandom nuisance, because they're just a nuisance in my perspective. But Brandon, you're not wrong, because there are people out there that just want to bash on things just to make a buck. And I find that to be intellectually lazy. Because if all you can do is sit in front of a camera and just spout the same rhetoric and the same talking points, then you're being intellectually lazy. You're not adding anything to the conversation. And that for me is why one day I just turned off. I unsubscribed to all those channels that just were doing nothing but bashing on the entertainment industry. Now, am I saying the entertainment industry isn't without the need for some criticism? Yes, of course I do. I mean, I do critique stuff, but I try to critique it fairly. And I don't play a persona. Yes, I have a moniker, I have a name, because I prefer to protect my private identity. That's my prerogative. There are other people out there who don't, and that's cool too. But what I put forth on the internet is a reflection of who I am as a person. And yes, at times I can become hot-headed, because I have a very low tolerance for BS, and I have very low tolerance for people who prey on others, and I have a very short tolerance for liars. Those are the three things that I cannot tolerate. And I think that's true of a lot of people. I have a relatively straightforward moral and ethical compass. And I present that in the content and how I present myself online. And when you're just putting out the 100th video about how all these fandoms that we are a part of are just being torn down and they're being interjected with all this social commentary and so on, I'm done. I don't want to listen to the same rhetoric anymore. It's just, it becomes tiring, it becomes toxic, and I just don't want anything further to do with it. And because of that, because I do have that stance, I have lost some associations, but I've gained a lot more because I am myself. And I think if we, as people who exist in the online sphere, would just simply be ourselves. If you want to have a gimmick, okay, that's fine. Have a gimmick. That's cool. I don't have a problem with people having a gimmick because it shows creativity. But if you're using that gimmick to do nothing but bash and hate and hate and hate for 24/7 on end, on repeat, it just gets boring. And that for me was one of the biggest reasons why I did walk away from the Fandom Menace and certain other groups as well, because the conversation became boring. I don't want to listen to an echo chamber. I don't want to necessarily live in an echo chamber. I want to hear other people's opinions, even if I'm going to disagree with them. There is a guy I am very good friends with, and he or I as diametrically opposed to our opinions on The Last Jedi as you can possibly get. But I still regard him as a friend. I will still stream with him. I will still talk to him. I will be more than happy to associate with him. But it's just on that one particular point that we disagree.
Yeah.
And I think if the internet is going to change for the better, then we who are a part of this sphere need to put out a very strong and very resounding message that those who just want to be negative and be toxic are just, we're not going to pay attention to you anymore. We're going to turn you off and we're going to change the channel.
Okay. Quick one to the guys in the chat. If you want to push your YouTube channels to each other in the chat, please do. Cross pollination kind of helps. That's a good statement. I agree with that. It's it's kind of like the try not to waste your time with people who waste time kind of mantra sort of thing. And don't listen to people who don't listen to you is the other one. There is a load of repetitive stuff that kind of pops up, but certain things are cropping up that do look like they're being injected, shall we say, artificially, which is ruining stories. And I know you haven't watched Doctor Who recently, but we'll talk about the Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who, because the BBC brought in some policies in 2016, and Doctor Who kind of, that's when Peter Capaldi turned up, and that's when all of a sudden things started kind of going off the rails ever so slightly. And then Chris Chibnall turns up and he kind of rams it into the side of a mountain and says, "Look what I've done." And we're like, okay. But on the bright side, unlike Ryan Johnson, Chris Chibnall keeps his gob shut and acts professional, which I do appreciate. But they got Doctor Who, and they made Doctor Who a woman, and it was like, okay, if you're going to make Doctor Who a woman, you've got to make it work. So if you watched the previous one, Capaldi, they turned the Master into a woman played by Michelle Gomez, who was fantastic as the Mistress. Yeah, so they did a gender swap to see if it would work, and Michelle Gomez nailed the character down. Crazy, but she was still feminine. She still had those kind of megalomaniacal kind of tendencies and stuff, and wanted to take over the universe and destroy things, and she'd kill people on a whim and that sort of thing. So they managed to make a male character, a female, work. And then the Jodie Whittaker era came along, and I've as I said before, earlier, I have this 4-episode rule. I watch 4 episodes of a TV show. I give it that chance, because if I watch most of my TV shows that I've liked, it's usually by the 4th episode if I know I like it or not. And I watched the Jodie Whittaker one, and the first one, you're forgiven kind of with the first Doctor Who, because they're supposed to be a bit manic because they've just regenerated. So it was a bit over the place. I'm like, okay, maybe not. And the Doctors have this bit where you go, that's the Doctor. Yeah, they have a little speech, they do something. So, for example, when you watch Christopher Eccleston, he talks to Rose and he says to Rose, I can feel the turning of the earth, I can feel it falling through the stars, blah, blah, blah. I can feel everything like that, where he describes the earth moving through the universe. And you're like, okay, cool. And I believe that you're the Doctor. David Tennant, he was a bit where he was on the spaceship and he throws a tangerine and kills a Sitrak, and he turns around and goes, no second chances. I'm that kind of Doctor. And that's when you believe he was the Doctor. Matt Smith was the bit where he beats the aliens and then he calls them back. And he turns around and goes, no, going away once is good. Never coming back is better. And that's like, oh, it's the Doctor. Peter Capaldi took a longer. I think it took to the Mummy on the Orient Express for it to have that kind of the moment where you go, that's the Doctor. But I think that was part of the story arc, and they were trying to develop the character that way. Jodie Whittaker hasn't had one of those moments. And everyone talks about these moments where you have these great, grand speeches that the Doctor makes to show that they are old and they're wise and they know what's going on and they need to push these things through. So the writing's not to that quality. And and I don't think that the Doctor was changed to a woman because someone had a good idea. That's the problem. Because if you look at Missy, as in the Master, who changed from a man to a woman, they had a good idea. It was to deceive you all throughout an entire TV series until you got to the end, and then turns around and goes, Missy sought for mistress. Well, I couldn't go around calling myself the Master now, could you? And they set that up, and you're all like, oh, it's obvious now, isn't it? You know, those great twists that you get in TV shows when you sit there and go, yes, why did I not get that? But with Jodie Whittaker, it wasn't that. And then they did something egregious. I am talking about massively egregious, yeah? They did an episode called The Timeless Children. And it's called Doctor Who because you don't know. It's always a bit ambiguous. It's a little thing here, a little thing there. You're not supposed to know the Doctor's background. It is Doctor Who, yeah, not Doctor We Know Who You Are. Yeah, that's a stupid series. We don't want to watch Doctor We Know Who You Are. And they went and they explained that the Doctor wasn't a Time Lord, and they literally just undone like 50 years worth of canon in a single episode. So the Doctor's not okay. It's this little time-traveling baby that came through, and then Time Lords just murdered them repeatedly to figure out how regeneration worked. So that kind of then negates Matt Smith when he was asking for extra regenerations and worrying about this is my last one, etc., etc. And it didn't make any sense, and it was there because I think it was because the BBC were ashamed that one of their biggest TV series was run by a white guy, and I'm like, no, leave it alone. And then they do. This is right. I think the BBC is probably the most egregious organisation because they turn around and claim that Idris Elba, you know who Idris Elba is, yeah? Suicide Squad. Yeah. He plays a great character called Luther. Yeah, Luther.
I've heard this show. I've heard a lot of good things about it. Yeah,
have to watch Luther. It's well worth the watch. It's quite. Don't expect anything nice, shall we say? Entertaining.
I got you.
But it's quite grim. Okay. And the BBC head claimed that Luther wasn't black enough. And I'm like, so I read it, and I was like, what? Luther's this lone wolf who kind of steps outside the boundaries of stuff, yeah. And when you hear that, you think something somewhere is wrong. And it was because he didn't have any Caribbean friends. The Idris Elba is from Ghana as his point of origin. I think he's cool. I think he's one of the kind of the coolest actors, and I love watching him. I thought it was much better than the Suicide Squad.
I would love to see him and Sam Jackson do a movie together or do something together because that would be absolutely badass.
Yes, that would. I've got him and Jason Statham. I'd like to see go at it. That would be kind of English kind of gangster sort of thing.
Oh yeah, totally.
But yeah, Sam Jackson, him that would be a really good combination. But there are people who are trying to interject these things, and some people have brought it out back, and they turn around and they said it's because Hollywood is. I think they're superficial. I wouldn't describe them as racist. I would describe them as superficial. Yeah, the amount of actresses they kind of burnt through, whatever. You're too tall, you're too short, you're ginger, your hair's not long enough. This, that, and the other, and you see Hollywood actors, and they kind of come across as a little wrecked. Look at Winona Ryder is a great example. It's like a meat grinder for people. And I think that they've made all these mistakes throughout the years, and now they're trying to overcorrect and then there's other people trying to interject politics, and they just merged the two together and gone, that'll do. And it's crazy because you want people of talent, because people of talent attract other people of talent. Yeah, exactly. It becomes like a magnet, like gravity, and everyone starts going towards it. And having that kind of these things from their side interfere with storytelling, and that's the bit that gets me, because apparently I need to find this document. I tried looking for it before, and there's a document from the Roddenberry Foundation where they said that you can't do certain things, like a woman can't be mentored by a man. And I know that Marvel has a rule that a female character cannot be seen being hit by a male character's fist. And go back and watch What If, and you go, yeah, I can't remember seeing Thor hit what's the most Captain Marvel with a fist. Yeah, the hammer, but no fist. It's really odd.
Well, the thing, and just a little thing on that, I think it would be a very poor taste. It might be something held over from when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and the Ditko and everything were all in charge of Marvel, and there were certain rules that they set in place that you never depict a woman being punched by a man. And I think it's partially from the social construct of things. Go ahead.
Yeah, comics code. I think it was under the comics code.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I can't remember details of it.
So
okay, sorry.
And I think that is actually that is a good rule to have in place. But here's the thing, and this is something I brought up earlier. Entertainment, pop culture is a reflection of the culture in which we live. You look at the cinema and the television series and all these other things of the 1980s, they are a reflection of those years. You look at same thing with the 90s going into the 2000s. They are a reflection of those years and the world as it existed then. The one thing I have said, and I believe this wholeheartedly, we may not always like the direction that our culture is going in. And that is fair. And we should, to one degree or another, speak out against it. Absolutely. The thing we need to understand is the TV shows and the movies and all these other things that are being produced now are still a reflection of the world in which we live. And I think what you're seeing with a lot of these channels, to one degree or another, is them pushing it back against the progression or the evolution of our society, of our culture, of the world in which we live. And you know what? That is to be understood. It is in our human nature to fear the future, to fear the unknown, to fear the different, maybe fear, but be uneasy of things that are different from ourselves. I'll use another quote from another favorite movie of mine. It's from the first X-Men movie with Patrick Stewart. And it's a conversation between Halle Berry's character, Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, and Senator Robert Kelly. And they're talking about why people fear mutants, because mutants are different. We don't understand why these people have these powers and these abilities, and therefore we are afraid of them because we don't understand. And the world around us is always changing, evolving, and sometimes that evolution has sped up to such a point that you feel like you don't have a firm grasp on it, so you try to overcompensate, and you try to steer it so far back over that you go careening off into a ditch, and you get stuck there. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that everything in the entertainment industry that I have seen, that I've enjoyed, that I have liked. I'll give you an example aside from the sequel trilogy. This new series that they had come out just a few months ago, The Bad Batch. I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes of it, and I enjoyed it to the most part. But after a while, it got repetitive, it got boring, and I just simply tuned out. I did finish the series, I did watch it through, but I did not review it. I did not cover it on my channel because it just wasn't, it didn't offer an opportunity for any interesting discussion from me. And I'm not going to sit there and pretend to enjoy something, or I'm going to sit there and just bash on something because I didn't care for it. I'm just going to simply say, this isn't for me. I didn't care for it, and I'm just going to move on to something else. And I have. And it's, as I said, the future is an unknown. We don't know what's going to happen in the next several years. And when we're trying to latch onto anything that is a sense of stability, particularly pop culture of the past, we're going to become very fiercely protective of it. And when we see pop culture going in a direction that we don't like, it's going to cause us to, in some instances, react very negatively, almost to the point of being exclusionary, casting out anything or anyone that thinks differently from the way that we do. And that right there is the biggest issue with the state of the fandoms that we are a part of and that do exist. People have a different perspective. We don't like it. We cast them aside instead of trying to have a conversation with them. They make one or two comments, and if we don't like it, we just chuck them out. We discard them like an empty soda can. And that is not a constructive way to have conversations amongst these different fandoms that we are in.
Yep, that's a really good statement. I'm trying to think of one now.
I'm sorry.
That is, oh my god, that's really, really well thought through. Really, really thought, provoking. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh god, I've got nothing to beat that with or add to. That's how good a statement that is. Because it is a case of, we should be accepting people's differences and stuff, and people can like Doctor Who even though it's not very good at the moment, and that's my opinion. But that's my opinion, and it's like we're allowed to have those opinions. It's great. Actually, I think it's great. I have this rule at work, and whenever we have meetings and stuff, and if we ever implement anything new, I make sure that we argue about it. And the reason I ask that we argue about it is because when it gets out into the real world and people talk, if it hasn't been argued through properly, we're not going to be able to sort these things out. So I'm a firm believer in conflict, and it's like who someone is when you you poke them and prod them and you see how they react. And knowing that, then it helps you understand them and stuff. And it's good to embrace some things that are different. There are some games being played with us, and people might be a tad overreactionary to those changes. Yeah, there's no doubt there's changes being done. I can see there's changes being done. I can find you documents and tell you when these changes started. But it's about enjoying things. And when I like fandom, I describe there's two types of fans. Yeah, there's the geek. Yeah, and the geek is the person who beams with positivity and loves something. Yeah, and then you have the nerd. And the nerd can tell you the power output of this of the Enterprise D, yeah, because they know it down to the minutia. Yeah, might know some of those things. Shh, I'm not going to share them on the podcast. but that's because you love. It's weird because you love something, and some of the stuff that you grew up with is like favorite toy. Yeah, if your favorite toy, say it was like a Transformer or something, and you play with it, kid, and you love the hell out of that toy, and then you put it away in the attic, and then after a while you take it out, and then you get it out, and it's there as it was. It's a bit more run down than it was. The special effects are showing, or some of the bits are showing on what you did, and it's great. And then you get maybe someone who's played with your toy in between may have broken the arm off of your Megatron. Yeah, and you're not happy with it. And I can see why people feel like that. Yeah. Don't you dare. No, sorry, there's someone there being extremely nerdy in the chat. I just caught it out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh,
I see it.
all right, we'll talk about deuterium and stuff later. Right. But that's good. Anyway, it got to the hour mark, and that's kind of where I wanted to go. I did find that clip that I was telling you about from Spaced, and I want to play it.
Okay.
I'm hoping it's the right clip because I didn't have that long to prepare. So let's share the audio on it. We'll end on this clip here, and we'll all have a laugh because we shouldn't take ourselves seriously. I'd just like to point out that the whole thing with the fandom menace being angry over things that Star Wars did has existed since 1999. So yeah, here's a clip.
So do not understand. You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you. This jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you? Now, I don't care if you've saved up only 50p's, okay? Take your pocket money and get out!
And I just, that is fandom. That is fandom from both sides, I think. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'll see if we can do this again. I'll try and catch some of your live streams. I always catch them at work when it's like lunchtime, and I'll pop on a YouTube stream and I'll start watching on that. Guys in the chat, thank you very much for chatting. Sorry, I haven't paid as much attention as I normally do to the chat. It's just this is new. I haven't had a conversation, and I'd like to focus more on the conversation. So you have to forgive me for that. So thank you for watching. If you just care to say goodbye, and I'll play out the outro.
Everybody have a great night. We'll see you next time.